All right, we've got the pommel, we've got the handle, we need to do the guard. So we could extrude this out and do that pull stuff that we did to duplicate the edges, but we're gonna do some hacks and see if we can get some of the solutions we want out of this. Let's take a look at this. We're gonna take a look at this pommel base here. And what we're gonna do is come first, let me get this extrusion just like we did up here on this, and we missed that earlier, so I'm going to go to 2 to go to edge mode, and it's kind of centered, so we'll go ahead and center just a little bit more, and this time we're going to do the same thing we did before, the chamfer. We're going to turn it way down, and you can grab it and move it over by the title wherever you need to be, and then we're going to pull it down until it's kind of level with where we want to be. Yeah, we'll go out a little bit further, and that's good. And then we'll say OK, and then we're going to go back to 4 for our poly mode and double click, click and control to grab both all the way around it. Or again, you could just drag a box around that area. Go back to scale, hold shift and extrude it out, and then we're going to scale it down like that. So now we've got that little thing. This one can be a little bit bigger. We could pull it back a little bit though. Just want some kind of recognition. Okay, so we've got that now. Back to making our, this will help us with our guard. So I'm going to go ahead and actually grab this pommel from the base where it meets the hilt, or I'm sorry, where it meets the handle, to right above where we just put that notch in. And I probably can make it bigger, but that's fine. Now, when Max changed the tool, and I had mentioned this before, what they changed it from is shift used to duplicate a face or an edge or a vert or whatever you wanted. Just like when you hold shift and move an object anywhere else, it would duplicate it. When they decided to do the extrude, which is a lot more in lines with other programs and making it simpler and we don't have to use the extrude anymore, they had to change the shift and move to copy something to a different shortcut. So to do that now, we don't hold just shift, but we hold shift and control. So just remember, when you're duplicating something, you hold shift and control. If I just hold shift, to give you an example, it does that. See, it added this extrusion weirdness to it. So I want to hold shift and control and move this up to here. I'm just clicking that area that we just selected and moving it up to the top. And it'll come up with this option. Do I want to make this an element, or do I want to make this an object? Well, for right now, I'm going to go ahead and make it an object. And by the way, I was bad and I need to name my object anyway, so we have names for this one. This will be handle assembly, for lack of better brain here. Okay. So now I need to get out of sub-object mode because I can't select anything else when I'm in sub-object mode, and I need to grab this one. When I'm out of sub-object mode, I can grab this secondary object, the one we just made, because we named it second, and we're going to do this and call it guard for now, because we're going to eventually attach it back together, which will be a part of the assembly anyway, but for now. Okay, so now I have this guard, and if I go to rotate it, it's obviously going to rotate around where the original object's pivot point was, so we need to reset the pivot point on this object. So in that case, what we're going to do is just come to the hierarchy mode here, just real quick, and we're going to say Effect Pivot Point, which is also the insert key on your keyboard, and we're going to say Center to Object, and then we're going to get out of it, back to the Modify panel. This will allow me, when I'm rotating it, to rotate it on an axis that I'm used to. The other thing we're going to do is come up to this little shortcut here, which is the shortcut for it is A, but it's Angle Snap Toggle, which means it's going to snap in 5-degree angles when I rotate it. Because when I rotate it right now, you see that it's like 0.76 in weirdness. If I turn this on, all of a sudden it's even numbers, so I can get to 180 because I just want it 360 or 180 degrees. Oops, and I let go as I was talking. So 180 on, and then I'll turn it back off by either pushing A or clicking on that button. Okay, so now I hope you're starting to get what I'm putting down. You can kind of see that we're close, and if we look at it from the side, left, we can see that we're really close actually from the side. So what do we do? Okay, what I'm thinking, and this is off the cuff, and one thing I'm going to point out is I add this these top polygons up on here, these, because I wanted to give us some breathing room. We really don't need them, so I'm going to delete them. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and come to this edge, this part of this bevel right here, and I'm going to control click around that edge too, just like that. And by the way, you could do it with an edge mode too. If I just double click the edge and delete, it'd be the same thing as just selecting that and deleting, because it's only going to delete what is being used. And when you get rid of an edge, then obviously the polygons disappear too. So there you go. Back to front. Oops, front. Okay. So if I look at this in the front view, and I can see that it's close, but obviously it's a little bit off here. It looks like I moved it over too much. Let me see if I can snap that to there. And we can get to snaps and stuff at some point, but right now that's good enough. Okay, so I've got this lined up more or less to the front. Now I just need to scale it. So let's try with a basic scale first. Let's just see if what scale does. Scale is going to make everything scale from one direction, so we don't want that. Probably what I should have done was move the pivot point to the base of this object. So let's do that right now. Let's go to W to move, and then instead of going over to the hierarchy menu and clicking on this, we're just going to push the insert key. And you'll see that this pops up. Ignore that it's not lining up in the right direction, because we've changed it, rotated it, done all this stuff like we've talked about before. But now that I have this icon, this gizmo showing up, it's telling me that I have control over the gizmo. So I'm going to move this all the way down to the base of where this is. It doesn't have to be perfect, but what that'll do, and then if I push insert, it'll get rid of it again. What that'll do is when I scale it, it'll scale in one direction like that. And that almost works perfectly, as you can see. Look at that. I can almost get this perfect in a couple of little alignments and I'm fixed. Now I know I need to go in two directions, but again, we don't want to lose this edge because it's lined up so perfectly with the handle. So we'll go back into edit poly mode, into vertex mode, and grab all of these and see if we scale it just like this, how that works. Now in this case, I'm going to just go Alt-X real quick. I'm going to just say, you know what? I'm not going to fight with soft selection, and I'm just going to scale it a little bit. Just those ones that are a little bit off, and just eyeball it. Okay? And now, look at that. We have our pommel lined up with our handle our guard lined up with our handle based off of just duplicating half of the pommel. Almost perfect, right? Look at that, beautiful. This right here is extra stuff, and we'll probably have another video on just throwing some extra things in there to make it better. But it was just you can put a gem there, we can do a bunch of things. It doesn't have to be out of the same object. Anyway, so now, without even doing anything else, I have this all almost set up. The only thing I need to do real quick is cap this top piece, because this top piece, if we look at the sword, let me unhide that sword piece real quick. I know it was bad there too. Look at that. I'll call this blade. There we go. If we look at that, it's going to be like not having it's going to be a big hole in the top of my sword. So we need to go back to the front, take a look at that, make sure it's lined up pretty good. We can tell, and we're going to grab this one. Oh, I'm sorry, the guard, and go to 3, because again, that's border mode. And if I didn't have that selected, all I do is have to click on that. Remember, we do have the bottom as a whole too. So when you're selecting this as a border, just make sure you're only grabbing the top area. You'll get better at grabbing things. Eventually, it'll just become second nature. Okay, so now I'm there, and I'm just going to do this. I'm going to hold Shift and scale in. Okay, I can do it a couple ways. What I'm going to actually do is scale in once, just about there to give me some breathing room, and then because we're going to do something later, and then scale it in again, just like that. And then when I have those all about to the center, or enough to the center of my needs, I'm going to come over here and just go to collapse. Now, some people may have seen this button right here. Cap is a really cool button, but it only works without a lot of cleanup if you have less polygons. So let me show you what happens. Let me hide the blade again real quick here. If I push cap, which only shows up in border mode, it will close that hole for me. But it's lying to me. It's not telling me what's going on. Right now it looks like there's no edges or polygons in there, but we know what we've done is made an N-gon. So let's open it up and take a look at it to make sure you see what I'm talking about. I'll turn edges only off and look. That's what it's doing inside of there, and that is going to be a nightmare to use and to mess with. So we're going to go ahead and not use cap, and we'll just control it with our own shift and drag and then in. And like, these are now tries, which are fine, and I could show you a trick how to make tries not at the cap too, and we'll do that in a second. But I'm going to go back in here just because it's annoying and turn on edges only so we don't like to see that. Okay, here's a trick. Remember how I told you that polygons or quads are what we need to have everything as, and these are tries? It's not bad if they're tries. Okay, tries is fine, but if we can avoid it, it makes it easier to grab. Because watch what happens when I go to 2 mode and I grab this, or sorry, grab this and go Alt-R, it stops right there, right? But look at this. If I take this edge and then I just remove it with the control, or just the backspace, it still keeps the polygon there. Watch what happens if I do that again and I say ring. It now goes over here. So this is a quad now. See, 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. So if I take this one and backspace it, and then do this again, Alt-R or ring button, it now goes up one side and down the other. It's now a full quad, a full loop. And if you don't want it to be that way, you can mess with it and do other things. But what we can do is just come to every other try inside of a cap like this real quick, and then backspace. Now we have quads all the way on the top, and that means that if we select this edge and Alt-R, we're going to actually have a loop that goes all the way down. Okay, so the last thing we need to do, the last thing that we should do, and you don't have to do that, that's just something that I think of when I do it. Probably more because I'm teaching. It doesn't necessarily need to be done, but it makes it easier. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is attach these so they're back together. And technically we don't have to, but it'll make it easier when we start doing the texturing for your first time. So I'm going to go ahead and do Alt-X on this so I can see it even when they're hidden like that. And then I'm going to come up to my options. I don't have any sub-object selected, and I'm going to say attach, and then I'm just going to click and make sure I only click on this one. These should be not clickable because they're hidden or frozen, but just in case, make sure you click just on the guard like that, and now they're all one object. Okay, but just to be clear, that doesn't mean their verts are attached. It just means that they're seen as one object. And what does that mean? That goes back to the element. If I grab this one, it's one element of this object, and this is the other element of this object right now. We want this to be grabbing everything when we grab the element. So again, it doesn't have to be this way, but we're just going to do this because it makes it easy for you all. So I'm going to show you another trick here. I'm going to grab, I could take each of these and go weld, target weld all the way through, but instead I'm going to grab all of them at once. And instead of saying target weld, I'm going to go over to the weld toolbar, which I guess the tool name is weld settings. I'm going to go to weld settings, and I'm going to turn this to 0 for now, just so you can see that that's how it looks now. And then as soon as I raise it even the slightest bit, it'll snap them together. It doesn't look like they're attached, but that's just a max thing. Okay, they are actually attached. Once they move, that means they've been attached. The other thing I want to show you is that if you keep going, basically what this tool is saying is that anything within the range that you define will be welded together. So if I keep going, it's going to weld everything. So it's not always the best thing in the world, but for something like this, it's awesome because I can just say 0.1, and now I have 0.001, and it's just snapping those two, and as soon as I say yes, and we're done. It's now all one object. It's now all beautiful and set up for me. They're all clean like that. Let's do this and do this. Actually do this, and we'll do that. We'll do this. And there we have it. The sword handle, pommel, and guard are all set up.